week 5 of the Whole Life Challenge, and this week is all about the shoulders. We're going to do a little rollout with one of the therapy balls, one of the role model balls. So either the Alpha, which is what I'm going to be using, the Yoga Tune-Up ball, which is the smallest, or the medium, the Therapy Ball Plus. So you can use a tennis ball or use a ball that has some good grip and some good give to it. Our check-in is just to check into the end ranges of motion of the shoulder in 2 different directions. One is your overhead position, which is externally rotated and flexed. So you'll bring your shoulders all the way up while maintaining impeccable spinal alignment. That is, that when your arms come all the way overhead, you don't get to drift your rib cage or chest forward and stick your tush out, but instead you keep your head, rib cage, pelvic alignment, that brain, heart, cervix. And you can look up and see which shoulder has more impeccable movement there. And I can see that my right shoulder has more external rotation, my left one doesn't have as much, and that the range of motion is a little bit different from side to side. Then our second check-in is the opposite range of motion, internal rotation and extension. And this is like your tricep dip position or your end position for lat activation. So same thing, without changing the head. My head always wants to go forward here. Head, rib cage, pelvis, and then eyeballing yourself or trying to get a sense of which shoulder. I can't even see it, so maybe you can see it on camera. I have no idea which one is higher or lower. My inner GPS, my proprioception, isn't really giving me that feedback right now, but maybe it will after we use the therapy balls. So I'm going to meet you at a door jam, and we're going to do our rollout. See you there. So I love doing this at a door jam because the door jam limits the movement of the therapy ball. So I've got my Alpha, which is going to cover the most surface area, and then I simply lean, this is my left shoulder deltoid complex, right into it. I can use my right hand to also stabilize the therapy ball. So at first, it's just a matter of leaning in and breathing, acclimating the pressure to what I can tolerate. And once that feels like we're being met, that I'm being met, I'm going to do a little bit of pin and spin with the therapy ball. So that is that the ball twists into the soft tissue, and then once I find that I've hit my stretch barrier, meaning there's no more movement available of the tissue, then I start moving my shoulder in as many different directions as it can possibly go. And you can find little tiny bundles of hypertonic tissue in the deltoids. Usually there's lots of different strips in the deltoids that are overworking for others. And so I'm just seeking those out, continuing to spin and mobilize. And then I can create a little bit different angle with the humerus. I've got that arm behind my back and breathing and letting the tissues stretch under the pressure of the therapy ball. This can be done with any size, as I mentioned earlier. And then finally, I'm going to go down to the deltoid tendon. So the deltoid tendon is where all the fabric of the deltoid converge onto the humerus. You can see that indentation. I'm going to go right there, and that's going to talk to the fascia between that region as well as the bicep tricep. So I'll tackle a lot of different tissues there, and that just feels amazing. This onset of tricep and this onset of bicep. So lots of different creative things that you can do. I'm going to go to the other side. So on this side of my door jam, I have a little bit of a lip, which is, I don't know what this is called. What is this called? I have no idea. I'm not a house builder. I'm a bodybuilder. Well, I'm not a bodybuilder, but I'm a body rebuilder. How's that? So leaning in and meeting the tissue. And this shoulder feels already super goopy and mobile. The soft tissues feel mobile, where I felt like there were a few more trigger points in the left deltoids than the right. What is a trigger point? Trigger point is a hypertonic region of tissue that is, for whatever reason, just under constant contraction. And that constant contraction is a message from your brain to certain fibers within the muscle to stay tight. And so that can really hinder full range of motion. And that's what I was talking about in week 1. You can't stabilize what isn't mobile. And so if I have parts within my muscles where there is no mobility, I'm not going to be able to contract them and strengthen them because they're already totally contracted. They're constantly contracted. I have to figure out ways of tricking those tissues into uncontracting so that I can improve the fluid milieu, the soft tissue motion, the fluids around the soft tissue so that they can uptake nutrition and get rid of their waste. Okay, so I'm spinning here, the reason I didn't spin right away is, like I said, it was so soft, it didn't really need to have any extra input. And then different directions. Breathing through the nose ideally, and then coming down to that junction where the deltoid tendon is in proximity to the tricep and the bicep. So depending on how I rotate the humerus, and you can use your creative license here. Let me show you one more thing, since this is a really good place to do. If I want to get to my anterior delt, and sometimes I can get some trigger points in my anterior delt because I'm nursing my baby and carrying also a 3-year-old around all the time, I can get really icky in the very front. So what I do is I'll bias pressure into that anterior delt. Hello, camera. I hope you can see. And then bring the arm behind me as if I'm in the sort of handcuff position, and slowly lean and let the alpha ball track backwards across that anterior delt towards the medial delt. And this is just heaven for me, especially with the nursing and the carrying and all the stuff you got to do. All right, out I come, and I will meet you back in the middle and show you 2 more moves for our shoulders. All right, so we've just done our work in the door jam. Let's do our recheck. That overhead position, external rotation and flexion, spine stays aligned, and okay, so my left shoulder got a lot more movement, and that was the one I said had the trigger point. So my right one is probably normal, and then my left one, it needed the work, so that was fun. Then internal rotation and extension. And gosh, I don't know what you're seeing on camera, but I feel like I have a lot more engagement all the way through extension, which means the long head of my tricep turned on a little bit more, and that's probably from when I worked on the tendon. All right. 2 mobility moves, or actually 1 mobility move and 1 stability move. So this is called dancing with myself, and this is one of my most favorite moves to mobilize the entire shoulder girdle. That means the humerus, the clavicle, and the scapula all get to do a thing. So what you'll do is you'll externally rotate your shoulder, meaning you hitchhike backwards, plant your palm or the fingertips against the wall. If you have a lot of wrist mobility, your palm can flush with the wall. If not, fingertips. That works for me. I don't have as much extension in my wrist. Hand is slightly higher than the shoulder. You'll bend your elbow, and then you'll turn. So I'm actually externally or internally rotating my shoulder and pivoting my whole body underneath until I land in that internally rotated and extended position at end range. Then you do the opposite. Externally rotating until, lo and behold, you get stuck. So going back and forth about 3 or 4 times. And I'm just going to go through that about 3 times for you. You can spend a little bit longer. Then left hand, same thing, trying to keep the palm on the wall or perhaps the fingertips, depending on wrist range of motion. Bend the knees, bend the elbow, and then turn. So I'm turning over my right shoulder, which is taking me through a range of motion that internally rotates the shoulder. And the rest of my body essentially does what's called a reverse action, and I end up in my end range. And that feels really good, especially because I had, unbeknownst to me, some congestion in that left shoulder. What's great about the role model balls is they'll point out to you where your body has stiffness or stickiness. And sometimes your movement, you can't even tell where you are inhibited, but the tools give you the feedback exactly and precisely where you're lacking that intrinsic mobility, right? The mobility that your body could have, but maybe it's just lost, it's out of touch with. This is a touch tool to bring you back to touch with that. All right, and then our last move now is to now take all of our mobility and give us some stability. It's the classic downward dog pose. We could actually spend an hour breaking this down, and I'm giving you like 20 seconds of it. So look for some of my other videos or some of my other workshops online, and we can talk about down dog in elaborate detail. All right, hello shoulders. Shoulder blades move away from each other. Rather than move away from your ears, they move away from each other. That's protraction and depression. And now the scapula, the shoulder blades, will upwardly rotate as I hinge back and come into that inverted triangle shape of the downward facing dog. Now the goal here is that I keep my spine aligned, meaning I have my normal thoracic curve, my normal lumbar curve. So I'm not doing a back bend, I'm not doing a forward bend. I'm trying to keep my shoulders relating to my rib cage as impeccably as possible at the scapulothoracic joint. That's the joint where the shoulder blades meet the rib cage. I'm trying to maintain this for upwards of a minute or so and continuing to concentrate on the actions of moving the shoulders away from my neck, moving the shoulder blades away from each other, and then allowing them to upwardly rotate in order for that position, that overhead position, to be awesome. All right, well, this was shoulder hello, but now it's time to say shoulder goodbye, and I'll see you in week 6.